It's like when no one has ever been held responsible for their behavior. I do think it falls in line with that. When no one has ever sat at the dining room table and said, okay, mum and dad, this is what's happened. This is what you've done. Or mum and dad, children, this is how you're acting and this is why it's not okay. Hello. Hello. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Daily Humans podcast. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nina.
Hi, Nina.
Hi,
How's it going?
Ashley. I'm
How's
doing
Germany?
good. Germany is trash as per usual. Like, no offense, but life is good.
That was the perfect summarizing of what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
trash, but yeah.
Dust it off your shoulders. Yeah.
Yes,
Is that the right
yes.
word? Yeah. Yeah.
Brush it
How are
off your
you?
shoulders. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Apart from pinching a nerve in my back, I'm swell. I'm just so. It is what it is. I'm in that phase. Pinch a nerve. It is what it is. Break a foot. It is what it is. Car breaks down. It is what it is. Kumbaya. I haven't broken my foot. I'm just saying, if it did happen, I would literally just sit there and go, fractures it is for 8 weeks straight. Okay, done. You do get
Yeah.
to that point, even though that is a little bumpy as well, where you just, it is what it is. It's been my saying for the last month, I'd say. Actually, let me take that back. It's been my saying for the last probably 2 weeks.
I love that the last month. Actually, it's 2 weeks. Listen, we've both gone through a lot in the last few weeks, so it's reasonable, and you're doing an amazing job holding on and being positive and trying to take things in and experience things that are maybe difficult to process, but allowing it to be and easing yourself out of the state by not judging yourself for it or judging certain things on it, placating certain ideologies upon it. So I'm proud of you for that. Seriously, it's hard work.
I'm proud of you. We jumped on that bucking, what are they called? The bucking things, or you jump the mechanical bull. We
Oh
jumped on
yeah.
that bull and we just
Yeah.
held on. Yeah,
Yes.
that's where I think of it. We held on.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we stayed
absolutely.
on. And we won a prize for that. Do you know what our prize was? Do you want to know what it was? I don't even know. I'll tell you when I find out.
It's a surprise.
Surprise. It's a surprise. Happy birthday to anyone whose birthday is today.
Yes, happy birthday.
Yeah, definitely.
No. I really loved, I just want to say this. I know we say this occasionally in a few episodes here and there, but if you guys haven't listened to our last episode or last few episodes, in fact, whether you do it on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, or everywhere, girl, but please go and listen to it because we talked about some really cool things and we think you'd really like it. But one of the things I really want to just speak upon real quick because I kind of brought it up suddenly, and there are some things that I do want to, I feel like, play into this episode a little bit that I do want to emphasize, and that is, I talked a little bit about my father in the last week's episode, and in that I had mentioned how a lot of the times we transition through life not really realizing our predecessors, our ancestors, whoever they may be, guardians, parents, grandparents, the people that we are raised with, etc., the people that help us grow up, how they're moving through their own trauma and breaking it in their own way and moving away from what they've known to be reality while they were growing up and what they've been implemented with by society. And oftentimes we are not really present to it until we're much older, until we can make realizations of, oh, okay, this is something that was really hard for them to go through that they never spoke about. And I think a big progress within my own healing journey, I will say this, is that while there are certain things that are very similar and that I'm still working through in my own journey of healing and becoming who I want to be and letting go of everything in between as I am becoming, is being more open to not only making mistakes, but being in a transitional zone and everything that comes in between, all the emotions, all the happenstance. That's why I really wanted to compliment Ashley just now in holding a, I want to say positive or just a more optimistic mindset when things don't go the way we plan, because it is something that you tend to do quite good. I don't want to say easily because I'm sure it doesn't come easy for you, but it is something I've seen you display quite a few times now. And I just think it is amazing. I really want to say that, to have a, okay, this is happening. I'm going to process this. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to think about some things at times, but I'm going to just let it be and see how things go. I think that is such a superpower. It really is. And it's something that I definitely am knitting more into my fabric of being. So congrats on you, Ashley. It's a journey. I know everything is a journey. It's not linear, but I really want to commend you for that. That's great. You're great. As per usual,
Thank
five
you.
stars.
Thank you. It stars. What it stars. I was the kid that never got the stars on the shirt, so thank you. I really
Mm,
appreciate that.
you're more
My
than
friend.
welcome. May I ask, Ash, what has been, I feel like, not I feel, but what has been your journey thus far in not only living your life and progressing forward, but also being content? Or I don't know if it's content, I don't know if that's the right word, but being where you are and then transitioning towards something new. How has that journey been for you thus far?
Mm. These days, it has its easiness to it in a sense
Okay.
because it's nothing new. That's kind of where the it is what it is comes from. Is it's nothing new. This isn't my first rodeo, my second, my fifth, 10th, 1 millionth. It feels like. I mean, I've been alive for 28 years. Experiences started young, so you can't control when just certain things happen. When a majority of things happen, you can't control. So transitions, frustration is valid because sometimes that's what comes up. Where it's like I imagine it like it happens and you're like, "Mm, that's so good. It's so good. It's fine. It's all good. I'm gonna lose my shit, but it's fine. I'm all good." Those are the moments where I've had sometimes where I've had to make myself laugh because I'm literally in my room pacing and I'm like, God, I'm gonna. No, I'm not. I'm fine. Like, fucking. Yeah. But gratefully so, I'm very grateful to be at a stage where when the moment presents itself, I just essentially you might have certain feelings come up towards it, but I am open arms to it because I know that it is for my highest good and it's for me to transition into a better mind space, headspace, and a better place for me to exist in, really. Like even recently, and I told Nina about this Q-tip idea is great. Everyone consider it because I get watery eyes. Um, recently I went out for dinner with my family and I haven't been out for dinner for a long time. You know, it's a bit expensive. But nonetheless, was excited to have that experience again. But having in the past being in a certain state where social anxiety was a major factor, and it still kind of presents itself today, but not as forefront as what it used to be. Went out for dinner. I wear my style is very different per se. It is what some say is out there, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, but I still do struggle with the resistance of how I'm going to be treated on the outside of myself externally. And that falls in line with many different reasons why there's that feeling of unsafety with that. I'll get into that in a second. Anyway, sometimes people stare, sometimes people look, and that was the case on Sunday. And I can cope with it a lot better. But that particular day I was observing, because that's something I do a lot these days. I just observe myself. I observe how I'm reacting, what is arising, how it's feeling, and where I'm feeling it too. Stomach, chest, shoulders. I observe. And I was observing myself as I was walking down the street, and people were staring, and I could feel it around my chest, this need to react and go into a fetal position, like a protection mode. It is a protection mode, essentially, when you're putting your hands around you and you're covering your torso part and also putting your head down. It's a form of protection, really. And I was observing that. And then some other situations happened that I won't even go into. Nothing bad or anything, but a, a test to me on how I'd react to it. And afterwards, I had that conversation with Nina. And then the next day, it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. That seems to be my analogy these days, but it did. I suddenly was sitting there and thinking about what I had observed, and it wasn't just that. Everything that linked to that feeling of feeling unsafe was just exploding, imploding into my space. And I realized that this all falls under the fact that I just don't feel safe. I don't feel safe to be seen. I don't feel safe when people stare at me. I don't feel safe when I'm out on the street. There's just a lot of factors there. And safety is something that I think it's one of the biggest things. How do I explain it? I think it's one of the biggest issues that I'm trying to navigate through, because I just don't believe, as much as I use affirmations and as much as I say what I say when I'm getting healing done, because there are different techniques that I'm trying out. Shamanic healing has come into the play. Had the Havening technique, if some of you have heard of that, has come into play. I'm literally trying whatever I possibly can to find a sense of safety existing in this world, because the feeling of unsafety, it's such a widespread issue. When I'm in my car, I feel unsafe. When I'm hanging in the washing, I feel vulnerable and unsafe. When I walk out the front door of the house, especially at night, I feel unsafe. And the endless possibilities just snap into my head. And it's not a chosen thing either. It is not something that you just roll over out of bed. Yes, this is how I want to feel today. It's just a cycle, and it just cycles itself through in any given moment where you're vulnerable, where you feel vulnerable, especially from past experiences. I'm not going to invalidate any of it. I don't need to invalidate any of it. I understand it. But it is difficult to live when when you don't feel safe anywhere, when you struggle to feel safe just from majority of living and society. I don't even feel safe driving or walking. Like, it just, yeah. So it's one of those transitions, which also falls into your question, that I think is quite a difficult one. I'm finding it quite difficult to navigate through, but I know that I will, because I'm here right now and I'm doing this and I'm being seen. This is a vulnerability, as I've said in a podcast episode before. Being seen is a vulnerability. You're opening yourself up to the world, and I don't have a lot of trust in how others are going to treat my space and if I'm going to be safe in their space and in their company. It's why I cannot go to birthdays by myself. I don't go to events by myself, because that's a vulnerability for me to just be there as me. There's no one else that I'm with that I could turn to. I just there are so many things I've missed out in life. It's a full experience, that one. So that's recently what's been coming up, and a current main focus is navigating through it. I don't have any answers. I honestly That's sort of where it's like, it is what it is. I'm letting it flow because I don't really know. I just go by what feels right, and I'm happy to try this, and I'm happy to try that. It is what it is. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's another thing I think of letting go is, if a technique doesn't work or another one doesn't work, it's nothing against you. It's just there's a range of stuff out there to try. There really is. I know it gets exhausting, but for me personally, I would rather be exhausted by that than be exhausted by me living and existing on this planet. So, nonetheless, though, I will always stick to it is what it is and go from there because, yeah, you just can't control it. You just can't. You just have to validate it, really. Fighting against it, you spend your time fighting against how you're feeling without understanding that you feel that way for a reason. I'm in this position for a reason, and I totally get why I'm in this position. So I can't say anything else other than I hear you, I see you, I validate you, and I want to work with you to heal so we can exist in a better space together, you know?
Yeah, I totally just understand. And it is one of the hardest things to be vulnerable. For me personally, in the last few months or so, and actually, no, the last few years, I've been in different situations that have challenged me and have brought about new environments, new discussions, and sitting there and really being confronted with the thoughts that pop up in your mind when you're trying to protect yourself. That is
Mhm.
something that is very hard to progress through. And I've made a lot of mistakes with my communication and my actions towards people at times when I have been in those states of trying to protect myself and having old fears come back, or old concerns, or like concerns that haven't really been addressed in the way that it's appearing at that moment. And looking back on it now, in certain aspects that I won't like get specific on, but there are a lot of ways in which I wish I would have behaved differently. But something that has been helping me quite a bit is, I don't know if I can call it a motivational quote, or it's definitely not inspirational. It's more so along the motivational line from a different creator I've seen on YouTube. I can't remember who it was anymore though. And they had said, you did the best you could at the time in which you were in that moment, whatever you recall when you think about, oh, I wish I would have handled that differently, or oh, this made me uncomfortable, I wish I would have said this, or I didn't say that, or etc. You did the best you could with who you were at that time. And for me, new elements of this have popped up that I think I've mentioned a little bit in a prior episode regarding just being vulnerable in the space of crying in front of others, because that is connected to some trauma I've had of the past, of not, being taken seriously, or being kind of like guilt tripped on the fact that I have emotions, which is hilarious. These are all things that you can think of objectively and be like, yeah, yeah, crying is fine. I have no problem with crying. Crying is a human emotion. But when you're faced with it in the moment, when you're in a situation, in a new environment, whatever, and that feeling, that fear, that protection mode comes back in, which is automatic because it is based on, I believe, definitely survival mode in one way or another. That's a completely different animal. So to be in that kind of a position, to be vulnerable and to choose a different way, or to choose like Ashley to be like, okay, it is what it is. This has popped up before. I don't really know where to go from here, but I'm open to the opportunity in learning or having something come in that can help me trans transverse progress, that's a word, progress into the area in which I want to move into is such a great space to be in.
Oh my gosh, I hear you with making mistakes and acknowledging them. Even just survival mode and protection, even in survival mode and protection mode, doing things out of that, but unconsciously affecting people in that because you cannot see that your behavior is not exactly a healthy way of expression or being. But you really don't know. Healing from the guilt and shame from that, oh, I still have days where it pops up into my head, and I feel embarrassed by it, or I could feel shameful and guilty over that. Learning to forgive yourself is a whole different journey through this, you know. Yeah, it's, one particular experience, which was such an observer, and I'm glad that I went through it per se, is there was a former friend who had ended the friendship with me. And at the time, because we didn't actually have a conversation and I wasn't told why, which I understand it can be quite difficult to do so. So there's no ill will on that. But I didn't understand why. So it led me down this pathway of confusion and so confounded and upset and angry and all these emotions. And it's like, what did I do? I don't understand what I did. I was so conflicted. And then time came when I had to make the decision to end some friendships. For the first time ever, I wasn't the person to stand up to the podium and make those decisions. I definitely was not that person. So when that moment presented itself and I saw how people reacted to that decision that I made, I was like, oh, okay. So literally 2 days later, I messaged that former friend, and I said to this former friend, I understand. I understand why you did what you did, and I am truly sorry. And I apologized. And it's like all the anger and confusion dispensed at that exact moment. It was one of my greatest learning experiences, honestly, is understanding that sometimes people have to do things for themselves. Yeah, conversations need to be had. I definitely advocate for that, but we were all very young and communication wasn't a talked about factor enough like it is today. So there's no ill will. But it was truly an experience for me to see that I am not that person and the decision came for a reason, just as when I had to make that decision for a reason, for my own health, for my own sake. It was literally a detrimental decision. I needed to do this, but no one understood that and no one could see that. Even when I was pouring myself out in such an emotional state of mind, like basically begging that I need to let this go because I'm not okay. I'm not surviving. I can't continue my life like this. Nobody could see beyond the fact that I had made that decision. And I was the complete same. Really was one of my greatest learning lessons. And I am very grateful for it. Truly. That someone made the decision to end the friendship with me for their own mental health. I really do praise that. I really do, because What it takes when you have so many people going against you, I get it. I get it. The resistance that I got, the amount of people that said, "Why did you do that?" I don't understand why you would make that decision. The amount of people that unfollow you, just the whole shebang. And I'm not saying this with any ill will either. It's just the cycle, isn't it? It's a cycle, and it is what it is. It is what it is. But I'm very grateful to have had my eyes open to this. Yeah. And through the process where I continually needed to let go of more people and continued that process, I was even taught how to have the conversation. And to be honest, even if they don't like what I'm saying, and that was a completely different experience as well. True. Truly. It's all a learning journey when you've never been through it, but it really does build you up to be a human being that has such an expansion and is so open and just, I think in a lot of ways validates people's spaces because you're able to see beyond what's in front of you. So that was one of my greatest mistakes, but also greatest learning lessons because I had no intention to harm anyone. And I do not have any intention to harm anyone. But I really needed to learn these things to be able to understand how I was unconsciously, but also in some cases too, and I will admit it, through anger and through emotion, there were some things that I did consciously. I knew what I was doing. And I thought that this would this would put me in a certain place of no one can mess with me. I am a strong and scary person per se, trying to show strength by making decisions that essentially cause harm, trying to build up a shield of protection, which is what I said at the start, but not realizing that your protection is doing more harm than good. And if you're someone that has no intention to harm anyone and practices to do what you can that's right by yourself and others, trying to come at it through a stance of no one can mess with me, I'm invincible. Don't fuck with me because I'll fuck you up. I get it. I truly do. I get it. However, I do think that through that analogy, you could become blinded to the steps that you take next, or even be aware of it, but you're so consumed in protecting yourself that you completely miss what you're actually doing and what you're creating. Mistakes, in my opinion, are one of our greatest learning lessons. We can learn so much from them, but unfortunately, making mistakes has been so stigmatized and made out to be so unsafe, even hostile for a lot of people. And I totally get it. Dropping cups, dropping plates, the survival mode and the adrenaline, doing what you can to hide it. I don't agree that it should have been like that at all. I even watched one of my family members spill something on one of my blankets, and I've told this story before on my own TikTok. Spill something on one of my blankets, and then at the corner of my eye, I saw this person in such a desperate attempt to hide it. The fear, just the blatant fear. And I sat there and I thought to myself, this was literally me once upon a time. The adrenaline that you feel, like the anxiety that builds up from your stomach and your chest, because you're just waiting to be yelled at or punished. I turned around and I said, "It's okay. That blanket can be washed. It's all good." But I understand. I get it. Literally is what I said to this person. Took the blanket, put it in the washing machine, and grabbed another one. but just to witness someone else do what, I've done once upon a time, it's really disheartening that we've gotten to that point as a society where we've placed that much fear, we've implemented so much fear to the point that people literally go into survival mode to avoid their mistakes being seen. They feel so unsafe. You shouldn't feel that way around anybody, especially making mistakes. I'm not just talking about plate dropping and that either. It's literally just in general life, even in work. Make a mistake in work and there's reprimands, but it's like if the mistake is as simple as you've accidentally placed something on the wrong shelf. I think I remember that in retail one time, a customer coming in and being like, "But the ticket says this, so I should get it for this price." And then a store manager coming in and saying, "Who put it on that shelf?" I don't think it was a deliberate attempt. We get tired. You get exhausted, you have your day, especially as women, we go through cycles. Mistakes are gonna happen. You put something in the wrong place. It's just not validated. It's not allowed. Nina said it. Perfection is relied on more than the human side to life.
Yes.
Perfection is the pedestal and the hierarchy, which then completely invalidates which then human beings completely invalidate themselves. And they put themselves on a pedestal and keep their expectations of themselves so high that when they don't meet those expectations, it's a collapse, it's a breakdown, it's a burnout, it's a self-punishment cycle. And I will never validate the existence of that and that being put on human beings for what reason? What should anyone go through a self-punishment cycle for? Going through learning lessons is a completely different topic to this. Going through an experience where you need to learn from it, or you may need to see further on what's going on, that's a learning experience. But making a mistake, that is also a learning experience. And acknowledgements should be safe, truly. I'll let you speak
Absolutely.
now, my friend.
Thank you. Um,
Mm.
no, what you said is absolutely right. And it had me thinking, and it brought something up that I do also want to share along my journey of just life and stuff that's recently happened and all of that. And that is when you actually try to push away, as Ashley said, she's been in experiences. I don't know if that's the right word, but in moments in life where she's done things deliberately in terms of like protecting herself, making her strong, you can't mess with me in that sense of things. I don't know if I've mentioned this prior, but I am or was, I'm not like this anymore for the most part, was an anxious avoidant. So, in all of my life and every single aspect of it, I was always like, if you give me one inkling that something is not perfect, I'm out. you know, I'm over here, I'm running away, so you can't hurt me. And I've worked on that very, very long time for a number of years now, and I've gotten significantly better. But that's also, by the way, just to interject, due to very hard conversations and hard things to work through and grow through. But something that I recently figured out and noticed, and I was like, oh, this is still a remnant of this. This is still, it can still pop up in like tiny little bubbles. It doesn't have to be your entire way of being anymore, but these ways of relating and coping and wanting to protect yourself and run away and all that stuff can still come out in small incidences here and there in daily life. And one of the moments what came up, and I had an experience where I had to just kind of like look at myself and I'm like, am I being an avoidant here? Am I like, how can I restart it? Where is this coming from? Where is this behavior coming from? There was a part of me that wanted to protect myself, like, no, none of this is real. I was just like, no, it is real.
Mhm.
It is actually real. And I, after sitting with myself for a while, like a few days or so, and journaling things out and really thinking about it and thinking about how I want to move forward, I thought, you know, there are two sides of the brain. And I don't know where it can come from. It can come from trauma, it can come from life experiences. There could just be two differing sides. I don't know, ego, whatever you may call it. But one of them can be open to growth, while the other one is actively trying to tell you that growth is not necessary and another person is wrong or this situation is wrong and maybe you just misinterpreted it, whatever. It's trying to reject the growth because it knows that in that growth zone is uncomfortability. There it is, uncomfortability. Hey, girl, how are you? We tend to want to avoid you, but you're here. You know,
Uncomfortable.
yeah, exactly. And what came to me then was, if you refuse, let's say something happens in life and somebody comes to you and is like, I've used this analogy many times before, so I'll use it again here. And it's like, hey, what you said here hurt my feelings. What you did here hurt my feelings. What you did that other time or how you behaved here hurt my feelings. And you're like, no, I've never happened. What are you talking about? That's you rejecting reality. And it's actually, if you lean into it, if you listen to that person, if you take it in what they're saying, you're like, hey, this person cares about me. They're not doing this to hurt me. They're not doing this to like, you're a terrible person. No, they're like, hey, you hurt my feelings, or hey, you did this wrong. If they're coming at you in a correct way, i.e., in a respectful manner, because there are people who don't know how to do that too. And I've had my fair share of those experiences. Not gonna get into that one though. Ashley knows those stories. But if a person is genuinely coming up to you and giving you pointers, that's an opportunity for you to actually lean into that. And if you reject it, if you dismiss it, if you argue with it, because I've heard, oh my God, so many people, when you confront them with the reality, try to argue with you about how they made you feel. And it's like, this is not a discussion. You made me feel this way, you know? But aside from all the toxic ways people respond at times, if you don't take that opportunity, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot because it will continue on. Whatever you did wrong there, it will manifest, it'll grow, it will, whatever is there that needs to be worked on within you, it will continue to fester in your life. And that person pointing it out is giving you the opportunity to let go. Because what happens is, if whatever situation occurred with another human being in you, let's not say it happened at work or wherever, because the environment doesn't really matter. But if it happens between one human being and another, whatever, if it's a miscommunication thing, if you don't communicate correctly, that's a point in your life where you're not able to connect with the people you love. And that, for me personally, is not something that I can have in my life. I don't want to have any blocks in my life that prevent me from connecting and loving people the right way and in the way that they need to be. And it goes back to what I said in a prior episode, or maybe even multiple at this point, that what's happening in life is not a attack, really. It can feel like that at times, especially when you're vulnerable or when when you're caught off guard, whatever. But it's there to unlock whatever blocks within you that keep you from relating and loving people more correctly, or reaching your joy, whatever it may be, whatever the object of desire or connection, or whatever it is you desire to become and be. If you value relationships, if you value people, if you value friendships, like Ashley has pointed out in her experience of it, which I'll delve into as well in a sec. If you value those things and you want to be a kind, loving, open, generous person and validate people's feelings and who they are, then you also have to acknowledge the things within you that's blocking validation, that's blocking acceptance, that's blocking whatever may come up, maybe even anger at times as well, because it's different with everybody. But at the end of the day, your ways of being could block potential good people in your life and make in the way that you're reacting and you're responding push people away. Fortunately, I responded in a healthier way due to me reflecting, but there are so many people who don't know how to do that, or who, like Ashley has pointed out before, are blinded to the way they're treating people when they are in a protection response, maybe even past experiences coming up and infiltrating whatever is going on right now, that they then project on outward. And it's really, I think, interesting to see how we can experience it and then on the inside, and then it shows up towards us on the outside, and vice versa. And it's kind of this back and forth game of trying to learn and evolve and create and become who we want to be, and try to find openness within ourselves. I think this is more so what it is, the lesson that we're learning, or at least for me personally, is to hold space for my emotions, not punish them, not force them, but also be where I don't want to like put pressure on Ashley when I say this, but be more in a space like you where you can be like, I don't know, these feelings are coming up, they're really overwhelming, and I don't know where to go from here, but I'm going to try different things. I'm going to be open to the feelings and locate where they're at and really just reflect upon it, I guess I can say, but not let it be how I treat other people. This goes back to an episode we did before. I think it was the suicide awareness one that we did, when it's like we've experienced things and we're trying to shift our understanding and how we feel and deal with it so we don't pass on what was done to us, right? And that can come with its own complexities within the situation. And like I said in the beginning, being vulnerable, being in that space, it's not easy. So even when you do have moments and you don't respond in a way that you wish, like I have in the past in other situations and other people, learn from that experience. Like Ashley said, in her friendship, when the friend ended the friendship with her, and then you had to be in a situation where you ended friendships. We've all been in that situation before in one way or another. And it's not easy, but in the shifting, it's kind of like passing a ball, is kind of how I see it. In the shifting of how it happens and how it shows up in the world, how are you holding space for your emotions? How are you acknowledging them? Because mistakes are an opportunity for growth. And if we continue to see it that way, if we try to be more compassionate with ourselves when we make mistakes, we can then also be that way for other people. Obviously, there has to be boundaries with it, and there are limitations to that with how far people go and how far you can go in terms of how you project and act towards people. But if you're able to hold it, I think you're in a much better space of dealing with it in a healthier way. Does that make sense? Yeah. So
Yeah.
my experience thus far is just, when it comes up, it's uncomfortable. And there are moments in time where I wish I would have behaved differently or behaved better or responded better in other cases. There are other situations where I wish I would have been more firm and boundary and like, no, but it's a process of growth and evolution. And as we transition and become older, I believe it will become easier to differentiate in what areas and what situations we need to show up and how to show up in those places, in those situations. So yeah.
It's definitely something. Sorry, were you gonna say we're gonna
No,
continue?
no. No, no, no. You can go ahead.
My top just undid itself. 1 second.
Striptease.
Intermission.
Yes.
It's the test. It's definitely something I've spoken about before. The repercussions of not having conversations about mistakes that have been made in relationships and connections in general, and how people go about responding when someone has stepped into their space and said, "You've hurt me, you've affected me, and this is how you've done it." It's a make or break, I think, in a lot of ways. And why I say a break is because people accumulate how you've made them feel, and it builds up. It builds and builds and builds. And some people stay for their own reasons. But at the same time, I do find that when you stay in a connection and something is building, resentment is building per se, because they're not being heard. And this is human beings we're talking about. In a connection, in friendships, relationships, family, doesn't matter. You want to be heard and seen. And when you're not getting that, things build, tension builds. It's like that's why you hear about people just imploding and saying all the things that have happened in the last 5 years, and you think, "Well, that happened 5 years ago," because they've never had an opportunity to say, "This really affected me. This really hurt me," and you didn't listen. You didn't bother to help heal this. You didn't bother to acknowledge it and respond to it. But acknowledging but I also am acknowledging, like what Nina said, and even for myself, avoiding conflict even, the unsafety and fear of conflict, avoiding confrontation, just like anxious avoidance. They all really form into a pattern of disconnection to human beings because it's never been safe to have a lot of conversations and a lot of communication. We're just starting, not even just starting. We've been starting to have conversations that are expanding more and more, but I feel like in this day and age, it's a lot more validated and people are grasping it a lot more and they're having conversations about it. I feel like people are very open to what we're talking about, to learning. But where things unfolded in the past, they still do exist in the present, and that falls in line with again, the fear of confrontation, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of failure coming into those that have experienced, like we talked about in the last episode, parents that have immigrated from a different country and they have expectations. And in the family unit, failure is not seen as a good thing, it's not seen as a validated thing. So expectations are placed on the children to meet requirements, to meet standards, to meet those expectations, which then the fear of failure comes in because it's like, I have to keep achieving. I have to do this. I have to follow my plan. And they're not prepared for life. And if life happens, because life can happen, I'm not saying that it will on your pathway because I don't know your journey, but it can. That's also the reason why I personally stick with it is what it is because I can't control it. And I don't want to because when you do, you find yourself burning out quicker than you actually start the controlling process. You're so used to trying to grasp it. It's kind of like light. Think of like a ball of light in your hands, and you're doing everything in your power to consume it, but it's so powerful. And it's actually like protruding from your fingers, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and you're doing your absolute best with your entire self to control this ball of light. And then when you release it and let it go, it kind of just it goes here, it goes there, it goes here, it goes there, and you realize you can't control it. It's uncontrollable. That is life. Life is that ball of light. And unfortunately, because of the survival of humanity and what countless human beings go through, it all really connects to why we have the issues that we have, why communication is an issue for a lot of people, why confrontation is an issue, why having your mistakes put in front of your face just triggers people to the extent of protection, and they can't see what they're doing through that protection. I think of it like, and this is an experience too that I've had personally with people, different ranges, and I'm not saying this in a fault. it's forgiven, but it is a part of the experience that I wanna share. It's interesting when you go to some that are a lot older and you present something that they've done and you observe their reaction, not just voice-wise, but body language, how the defense mechanisms go up. I observe a lot more these days, so the defense mechanisms go up, their voice tone raises. I remember doing that. I've never done that. I didn't do that. I think you're just making it up. Or, I
Yeah.
don't think it was that bad. And you can tell by the tone of their voice, you can tell by the words that they're using that it's not about you. It's that they're hearing something that they don't know how to respond to. They're hearing something that they can't comprehend. They don't know how to take this in and what to do with it. So I used to say that it's easy in my frustration towards this experience because in my life, the invalidation of me stepping towards people and saying, "That really hurt." I was always met with, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I didn't do that," or I don't remember doing that." That was probably the biggest one. I don't remember doing that. So, if I were to step into their shoes, one part of it I feel too is that when you have never ever been shown a mirror, then when the mirror is finally shown, all you wanna do is smash it or fling it away. It's like when no one has ever been held responsible for their behavior. I do think it falls in line with that. When no one has ever sat at the dining room table and said, "Okay, mum and dad, this is what's happened. This is what you've done. Or mum and dad, children, this is how you're acting and this is why it's not okay." When those conversations are not had, essentially, and no one in the family does it. No one in the friendship group does it. You walk along life thinking everything I'm doing is fine and validated until someone comes into your space and says, "You've hurt me." And then all of a sudden, fall back, fall back, fall back. It is absolute protection mode, army gear, shield up, everything is up because this is unsafe in a ways. This is unfamiliar territory. No one has ever told me I've done anything wrong. My ego is affected and bruised right now hearing this. I've never heard this in my life. How dare you speak to me like that? I'm an adult. I know better. I know everything. That's ego. That's ego. That's no one ever telling you the truth because I guarantee many human beings have walked through their life and you have hurt someone. I guarantee every single person on this planet has hurt someone. Definitely, I have, 100%. It's just how people respond to the acknowledgement of that, and that's the thing that we're talking about because it does break relationships and connections up. That's why a lot of people are going no contact. How do you sit there in front of a parent and say, "The abuse wasn't okay. The way you talked to us wasn't okay," and they sit there and go, "I did nothing wrong. Nothing I did was wrong. How dare you say that to me? How dare you bring this up? How dare you cause issues in the family? You cause conflict. You're the reason that people don't want to talk to me, or you're the reason why no one wants to get together anymore." That kind of behavior, even though I can create potential realities to why people do this, if someone isn't willing to ever see, what forward moving do we think can come from that, really? And that's also notification too for people that don't understand why people are choosing to go no contact or are choosing to end connections and relationships. Because if you can't have that conversation ever, and this person just keeps existing in your life but harming your space, and they never want to see what they're doing, it's such an unsafe thing to keep in your space. It is. It truly is. And they potentially won't understand that, which is really sad, honestly. Because again, those people will sit there and say, I don't know what I did. I did nothing. I don't do anything. I am the victim.
Yeah.
No one has ever had an issue with me, so why does this person have an issue with me? It it's not the easiest pathway to take in remaining ignorant and blind to your own behavior. I can again, it can validate all the potentials as to why people do this, but it's I think one of the hardest things you can do is take this pathway, is to take the pathway of, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't do things like that. I've never done that in my life. How dare you say this to me?" I wanna fight people for coming up to me and telling me I did anything wrong. I don't do anything wrong. I walk through my life doing everything right. You've been taught that that is such a validation, it's such a rewarding pathway to take. You are literally taking the hardest pathway possible. You might think that it's easier to block it out. You might think that it's easier to put that wall up per se. But if you're sitting there and saying, "There's no one in my life. I can't talk to anyone. Why don't they wanna hang around me? Why doesn't anyone wanna talk to me?" Um, if you're not a safe space, why do you get to be in their space? Because everyone deserves a safe space, and people expect that too. So, it is a level of accountability and responsibility that no matter what we've been through, we have to have, because as long as we're having other human beings in our lives, this is a part of having connections, is being responsible for ourselves, because no one else can make the decisions for us. And what we choose to do and how we choose to respond and how we choose to act, it's all us. It's all you at the end of the day. I'm sorry you feel that way is not an apology. And pretending that something didn't happen and pretending to forget is not eradicating the issue. You're causing resentment, and then when that ends, you blame that person. When imagine if from the start, you just had the acknowledgement and the listening ears and the responsibility. Imagine that's just from the start, right? It would save potentially all of the other stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then also, what you then do is make that a habit. And then you can
Mm,
address more things in life and more people in a healthier way, which will create, again, deeper and healthier foundations for any relationship or any situation space you walk into, because now you're walking into it with full authenticity and you're like, okay, I'm not, you're not walking into it with ego anymore of like, I'm perfect, I never make any mistakes, and if anybody points it out, they're a terrible person, because otherwise that would mean I'm a terrible person. And it's like, no, you're not a terrible person, they're not a terrible person. Depends on what you did, obviously, but if a person has the guts to come up to you and tell you and be honest and communicate, this is not right, needs to change, whatever, if you don't take that as a opportunity, my gosh, is that an opportunity? Because nowadays people don't talk anymore. I don't know if you've looked around, you guys, but people just block and move on. And so, to have the opportunity and have somebody actually talk, oh, wow, what a gold star. Not five like Ashley, but one. You get one or two. Two. Two is fine. Yeah, it's
thank
just,
you, teacher.
you're welcome. No, but
Mm,
we're constantly walking around, and there's so much discussion of, why is this not working out anymore, why are these people, I don't like being ghosted, why is this happening, why is this an issue? And it's because there's a breakdown in acknowledging your responsibility when you've not handled it in a right way. And then also there's a lack of communication, a lack of acknowledgement plus a lack of communication breaks down society as a whole in every single aspect, because that energy, you're carrying it into your work, you're carrying it into your relationships, you're carrying it into yourself. And that's ultimately where it comes from. Maybe something of the past, etc. But it is your, like Ashley said, you're an adult. And if you are an adult, you have the responsibility of making the decision, do I want to be a person that can be healthy and be there in and be present in my relationships, no matter where they are or what they are? Or do I want to continue to hold on to these blocks that are not serving me or anybody else, but just giving me the illusion of safety, the ego aspect of that, and are actually keeping me from the people and the life that I want to live? Because I promise you, even if it doesn't come out in your relationships, it comes out in other areas of your life. Blockages have a way of coming back up because they need to be worked through. And the longer you resist it, the longer you hold on to the delusion of it, the more, unfortunately, it tends to wreck in your life. And you may not even be aware of that. And that is the worst aspect of it, if you don't have people around you who tell you. And we've said this before, and on in order to have healthy friendships, because I think this was connected to the friendship episode we did at the beginning of the season. In order to have any healthy relationship, you need to be able to address and work through your mistakes, and mistakes are human. You're never going to get out of this life without making any mistakes. It's just not possible. But you get to decide how severe it can be and how much it affects other people in the long run. And even if it only matters, if you only care about yourself, how much it affects you. When you sit down, you finally have these discussions, though, with people, and you see how much it grows you and how now you have a healthier foundation. You've learned something new. It's not this perspective of like, if I have this conversation, it'll go bad. You now have good aspects of it as well. When it does go well, it can help you so much and it can help you grow so much. And I want to say this to anybody who's struggling with bringing up these types of conversations. You have to question yourself if the relationship is worth it. Do you believe in that person enough? Has there been enough proof in the past? Like really sit and discern what it is. Because if it's not a person on record within the past that's ever put you down or ever like suppressed you or like really been mean to you, 9 times out of 10, what they're mentioning bringing up to you that bothered them, or on the opposite spectrum, if they did something that bothered you, it should be discussed. It's a safe place to discuss. Like, give it a chance, give it a try. That's, I think, what I try to get to now is like, are you willing to give an opportunity for yourself here in order to express your emotions and yourself and how you feel when you are uncomfortable? Don't try to just shut down and run away or block it or pretend it's not there, because like Ashley said, it festers, it grows, there's a resentment. So really if the person is right or if the situation seems right, and it's a progress here as well, like it's a growth situation. Not every single situation will pan out the way you think it will, and vice versa, but you are worth it. You are worth being emotionally vulnerable with, being open and accepting of your own emotions as well. So try not to put so much pressure on it, because it's something that I have as well. There are people that I feel more comfortable talking to, and others where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I say this, X, Y, and Z will happen, and I'm just like, you're worth the opportunity of growth. And if it doesn't go well, at least you'll have taken the chance, instead of keeping it to yourself, bottling it up, and that person continues to do whatever it is that's bothering you, and they never know, and you continue to fester this pain and this resentment. It's better to just talk about it, see where that goes. If it doesn't go well, the conversation can go somewhere different. Other measures can be taken. If it does go well, it can be a point of opportunity and growth for the both of you and for the relationship. And that goes with everything, anywhere. at any point in time, even within business, even within, other areas of life, because we're all interacting with human beings constantly. They're everywhere. Unless you're talking about animals, and they're
Everywhere.
everywhere too.
Touche.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Totally done now. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining our episode yet again. We hope you have a wonderful
Totally.
time. Let us know in the
Totally.
comments below whether you're on Spotify, because Spotify has comments now too, YouTube, TikTok, wherever you see this, wherever you hear this. If you're out there, how do you think? No, let me leave with a good question today, because I rarely do this. What is required for you to be in a healthy relationship, and how are you exemplifying those behaviors in the way you show up? I'm gonna just leave that there, drop it, and you can answer that
Totally.
yourself. Totally.
Totally. Totally.
All right,
Enjoy
guys.
that. Totally.
Yeah,
Okay. Totally.
totally.
Good night. Totally. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Yeah,
Take
goodbye.
care.
Totally.
Totally. Yeah,
Totally.
totally.